Alrighty, so since today is Thursday, let's do a little bit of a throwback Soccer Thursday kind of episode. This, of course, is the third episode after the previous two episodes I did about the history of the Cali Classico at Stanford and also the inaugural season in MLS, which now I'm going to be talking about the playoffs of that inaugural season, which, as I mentioned back in the first episode, it was DC United winning the title. But let's see how exactly they, of course, won it, and also look at some very kind of funky kind of playoff format and the rules. And speaking of which, let's talk about these kind of rules, because you know how nowadays in MLS, especially this season where it's now changed where every single round is just single elimination, and that this wasn't the case in previous year, where after the knockout round and then once we head to the conference semifinal and the conference final, that's when we have a two-leg affair. Well, back in 1996, that was not the case. And in 1996, as I mentioned with the regular season rule of the fact that how they kind of want to introduce this sports to a lot of Americans, and that they also want to keep it kind of very Americanized, which is that a game cannot end in a tie and that it has to go into a shootout, and that the shootout were very similar to the hockey style shootout more than the penalty shootout from 12 yards that you see today. Well, they also decided to kind of Americanize the playoff format where it's not a two-legged affair or a single elimination, and that there has to be a best of three. So something that they copy from the NBA and also the MLB and also from the NHL, but it's a best of three. So away goals does not count because it's not a two-legged affair, and you will see that in some of these games, have the format has been today where away goal does count, and if it was a two-legged affair, the other team would have advanced though. And also, MLS Cup takes place at a neutral ground. I don't know why I wrote neutral group. It should say neutral ground. So yeah, this was back when MLS were playing at a stadium that was not at the stadium of the highest seed team. Obviously, this continued until I believe in 2013 was the first season when MLS decided that, you know what, let's just abandon the fact that we're going to play these games in a neutral ground, since it doesn't really draw a lot of crowd, and it also kind of make a lot of the traveling supporter kind of had to travel to the neutral ground, and that they have to spend so much money to, of course, get to the stadium. And also, they weren't drawing a lot of big crowd by playing in a neutral ground. So it was a smart decision that MLS eventually figured it out and say that, you know what, might as well just play at a home stadium. Might as well just kind of copy what MLB, NBA, and also NHL do, which is just the highest seed gets the home field advantage. If a game does tie after 90 minutes, there will be no extra time. Instead, they go straight to a shootout. And as I said, it's not your usual shootout from about 12 yards out and you basically kick the ball into the net and hopefully the keeper doesn't save it. It's a very kind of hockey-style shootout where you basically dribble the ball from 30 yards out and you have 5 seconds to basically get out. And that, of course, include every round except in the MLS Cup where we do go with the traditional kind of FIFA rule where, after the game is tied, you go to extra time. Although back then, I think the FIFA rule was when you go to extra time, they don't play the full 30 minutes unless if both teams, of course, remain tied, and that if one of the team did score in extra time, then it's basically basically count that as the golden goal kind of thing, and it's basically the golden goal rule, as I'm trying to say about that. So yeah, MLS, they do have the golden goal rule, and you're going to see in the MLS Cup final, that's when it was applied, as that game actually went to extra time. Now, the last thing that I also want to talk about is that teams with the lower seed will get to host the first game. So it's kind of similar to the two-legged affair where the team that is the lower seed gets to host the game first, and then the team with the higher seed gets the second game. I mean, I'm not quite sure if there's really an advantage into that. I mean, I guess the team that hosts the game first, the team with the higher seed gets a chance to get those away goals, and that, those away goals obviously will be very crucial heading to the second leg. But then if you don't get those away goals and then you're heading into the second leg either 0-0 or down in the second leg to try to come back after going down in the first leg, then yeah, that could be a bit of a disadvantage to the higher seed team, because now if the away team scores an away goal and they're already winning before, or they were losing before, then yeah, I mean that would give a big advantage to the lower seed team. But obviously, this wasn't with a two-legged affair. This was a best of three kind of thing. And I guess in some way, this also put pressure on the highest seed team, with the fact that, in the first game, if they lose that first game, then they are on the brinks of elimination, and that their backs are kind of against the wall, and that they have to win at home. So this was a kind of an interesting kind of format. Kind of reminds me a couple of years ago when I remember MLB tried to do a format where the team with the higher seed gets to, or the team with the lower seed gets the first two home game, and the team with the higher seed gets the last three home game of the best of three. And in some way, that kind of worked out for some team, and in some way, that did not work out whatsoever from some of the team. And people really hated that format, because the higher seed team, they're already going to be on the brink of elimination if they lose those first two games when they're on the road. So that being said, let's talk about the bracket. And this, I probably won't spend a lot of time talking about this, because there's only like 5 games or five fixture that happen in the playoffs. And the first fixture in the conference semifinal, or actually not 5 fixture, there's actually 7 fixture that happen in the playoffs. And the first semifinal come in the Eastern Conference, when the Tampa Bay Mutiny and Columbus Crew face each other. Tampa Bay, of course, won the first leg 2-0, but then they lost the second leg 2-1. And this is where it gets interesting, because if this was a two-legged affair, then Tampa Bay would have actually went through into the next round, because they would have a 3-2 aggregate score. But because of the fact that this was a best of 3, an aggregate score and away goals means absolutely nothing. That's why we go to a decided third game, which the Mutiny, of course, won 4-1 in that decided third game. Then in the other semifinal between the eventual champion DC United and the Metro Star of New York. In the first game, the Metro Star, of course, won 3-2. They won that thanks to a shootout where they won 6-5, and it was tied after 90 minutes in this game. Then in the second game, DC United was able to win 1-0 before in the final and third decided game, DC, of course, win 2-1 to move on into the conference final. Now in the Western Conference, we had the San Jose Clash winning 1-0 against the Galaxy. We had a little bit of a Cali Clasico in the conference semifinal. And then the Galaxy, of course, won 2-0 in Game 2. And then in the third decided game, they also won 2-0 in that game to move on into the next round of the conference final. Then in the other conference semifinal, we got the Dallas Burns take on the Kansas City Wizard. The Wizard, of course, won 3-2 in the first game, but Dallas, of course, won 2-1 in the next one. And then in the third game, this was the only decided game where we had to go to a shootout after both teams was tied at 2 apiece, and it was the Kansas City Wizard with the decisive win in the shootout, winning 3-2 in the shootout and moving on into the next round of the conference final. Now in the conference final, both of these games actually did not go to a third decided game. In both of these game was a sweep by the winning team that went to MLS Cup. We have DC United winning 4-1 in the first game and then winning 2-1 in the second game. We got the Galaxy winning 2-1 in the first game and then win 3-1 in the shootout after the second game was tied at 1 apiece to move on into MLS Cup 1996. And in MLS Cup 1996, it was DC United, of course, winning the MLS Cup and winning the inaugural MLS Cup of that season with a 3-2 win against the Galaxy after extra time. I believe Eddie Pope scored the extra time winner and scored the golden goal back in the 96th minute. So yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much how the playoffs went down in 1996. It was definitely very funky, and I still can't get the fact that 8 out of 10 teams actually made it to the playoffs. I mean, as I mentioned before, of the fact that people complain about today of how the more than half of the team actually made it are going to make the playoffs this season, and that a lot of people don't know that back in 1996 80% of the team actually made the playoffs, and that you have to be literally the worst team in the league to not make the playoffs in each of your conference. So yeah, there you have it. that is pretty much it for this Throwback Thursday kind of episode. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this episode, and also let me know in the comments as you of course you can of course request a throwback kind of thing that I want to, of course, talk about. Now, obviously, it's going to be something that it could be something about the playoffs in each season. It could be a team that had a fantastic season that I need to look back on. But let me know in the comments below. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.